Hello everybody, welcome to the Landor LINKS and Rally eCargo bike training and workshop. Thank you for coming, thank you for your time. I think there's over 260 people that are signed up to this webinar, so we're expecting a good lot of questions and some good involvement from all of you. The webinar will be taking the following format. So I'm going to introduce and kind of host and then bring in the speakers as we go along. So we've got Bruce McVean, who is the Acting Assistant Director for City Transportation. We've then got Adam Barnaby, co-founder and CEO of EAV. Then we've got Agata Lewandowski and Dorota Kutawanowska. Hopefully I pronounced that properly. But they're going to give us some insights from Poland, which will be fascinating. And then we have Edward Pegram, business manager at Rally, following on from that. And then star of the show, Richard Armitage from European Cycle Logistics Federation. Looking forward to hearing from Richard as ever. And we will do a Q&A with the group at the very end. I am aware Bruce McVean needs to leave shortly after his presentation, so we will be doing a Q&A for Bruce at the end of his presentation. So any questions that you might have for Bruce, please put them in the question box, and we will get to those when Bruce has finished his presentation. So a little bit of context from me. So I'm at the Department for Transport and I'm head of program delivery in local transport and working in active travel. eCargo bikes is one of my main programs that I'm delivering along with Cycle Rail. So quite fortuitous that they're kind of linked in that way. eCargo bikes, obviously in terms of active travel, they're one of a number of different projects and programs that we have aimed to get people cycling, to get people more active, to get people fitter, and to improve how we sustainably travel within our local communities. So the next slide you may have seen before just covers some benefits of active travel and cycling and walking. Some obvious ones about improved health and well-being, increased productivity for the number of sick days that people have, less than if they're not being active, and then of course the environmental benefits that are so prominent for eCargo bikes, which is the carbon reduction and the mode shift from vehicles to a more sustainable transport. And also stronger high streets and an economy, because people are more likely to go into a shop when you're using a bike or walking than you are for being in a car. So one of those, one of the benefits that isn't on there for eCargo bikes, particularly from the program I was delivering, is the saving, the financial saving for businesses on fuel, which is really important, obviously for businesses that are looking to get that kind of commercial advantage. And also for me, I think there's a unique selling point for different businesses as well, for being a sustainable company and a sustainable organization in delivering their business, whatever that may be. Next slide please, if I can. So just a quick bit of background. eCargo Bike Grant Fund, as you probably would have known, was launched in 2018, £2 million, and we partnered up with Energy Saving Trust and Bicycle Association to deliver that, as well as UK Cycle Logistics Federation. So that is Richard, we'll hear from later, and we really benefited from their experience and their knowledge in developing the specification for our program and helping us with delivery and getting it right. So I won't carry on with this now, because I know we're going to be slightly overrunning if I took everyone through a longer presentation. So if we can, I think we'll move on to our first speaker, who is Bruce.
Yeah, hello everybody. Good to see you all. Thank you for that. And really good to be here. So I'm Bruce McVean, Acting Assistant Director for City Transportation at the City of London Corporation. And next slide, please. And just for those who may not know, the City of London is London's financial district, also referred to as the Square Mile, not to be confused, of course, with that city called London, which is all around us, of which we are part of. And we're essentially the local authority for that area, and obviously work closely with TfL on transport matters as well. And we're obviously not in normal times at the moment, but when we are back in those times and pre-COVID, we had 500,000 people every day commuting into 1 square mile of central London to work in financial services and the businesses that support financial services. So a very dense urban environment, pretty unique, I guess. But nonetheless, hopefully some of the work we've been doing around freight, you'll see as transferable for that. Next slide, please. So in May last year, we adopted our first ever actually long-term transport strategy, which is a 25-year plan for how we will design and manage transport and streets in the city. And I guess the first thing to say on that in terms of the subject of today is that, obviously, any thriving city or place is going to need some level of freight and servicing, and that's no different for the city. And so, when we were defining what we meant by essential traffic in our transport strategy, we obviously put freight and servicing in there. You'll also note that we said that it's freight and servicing with a destination in the city. So about 50% of the freight vehicles on our streets are going somewhere else in London, and we'd rather they were not using our streets and we're using TfL streets for that. And the strategy has plans for that, but we recognise that almost every address is going to need access for freight and servicing at some time of the day and in some mode for that. Next slide, please. And I guess, the reason we had a transport strategy now was one, because the city was growing significantly and we expect to start growing significantly again as the economy recovers from COVID-19. But we've seen some really interesting changes in the way that our streets were used. So you'll see here about a 50% reduction in motor vehicles on our streets over about a 20-year period. These figures are 2017, but the trend continued into 2019 as well, and has continued quite dramatically in 2020, but I doubt that's going to be a representative shift. But you'll also see a huge increase in the number of people cycling on our streets, and not shown here as well is a huge increase in the number of people walking, and a huge forecast increase in the number of people walking as well. So at 90% of journeys that start or finish in the city are made on foot, including people walking to and from public transport. So I guess just to say that, obviously freight and servicing, the vans and lorries that are shown here are essential traffic, but that's not to say we don't want to reduce the numbers on our streets and the impact that they have on the experience of spending time on our streets. Next slide, please. So our targets in the strategy are that overall we'd like to achieve a 30% reduction in motorised freight. That's a slightly lower reduction than traffic overall. We're hoping to achieve a 50% reduction in all motor vehicles for that. So again, recognising that, whilst you could probably have quite a fair degree of mode shift for people, it's less easy to do mode shift away for freight and servicing. And crucially, we want to move the freight vehicles out of the morning, evening and lunchtime for us peaks as well. So a 90% reduction in those peak hours. Those for us currently are defined as 7 to 10 in the morning, 12 to 2 at lunchtime, and then 5 to 7 in the evening. I guess it remains to be seen whether those are still the peaks or what the impact might be in terms of extending the peaks as people change their work and travel habits post COVID-19. Next slide, please. And I guess anyone on this call will know that it's obvious the reasons for wanting to reduce the number of freight vehicles. When we ask people what they think about our streets, unsurprisingly, people tell us that they'd like to see fewer large, heavy, noisy vehicles moving around on them, and the kind of extent to which they dominate our streets. Obviously, large vehicles are also a significant safety issue, and we've adopted Vision Zero as well. So reducing those is key, and as well, of course, all the obvious things around air pollution and everything else as well. Next slide, please. So, and again, I'm sure this won't come as news to anybody, but the basic approach to doing that is to reduce, retime, and remode. Reduce for us is mostly we think about freight consolidation. Obviously, there's some other things we can do. We're working with businesses around reducing the number of deliveries they get outside of that. But essentially, we think that freight consolidation is the way to reduce the number of large motor vehicles, freight vehicles on our streets. And at the moment, we're driving that through the planning system. So any major development that gets approved at planning will be required to use a consolidation centre as part of that once they're occupied, and we set the targets in terms of the number of motor vehicles delivering that we'd like to see as a result of that. And that's been pretty successful. And I guess, to the point of this seminar in terms of whether we can move from one-off projects to, I guess, a sustainable transition, we think we're there on consolidation in the city now. The first building to use a consolidation centre is just about to be occupied. We think there's a pretty well-established market. Partly because we've created that by requiring consolidation through the planning system. Retiming is again working with the freight industry, working with their clients to retime those deliveries, but also using timed access restrictions on streets and loading restrictions as part of that as well. And then remoding is what we're all about here today. Cargo cycles I'll come into in a sec. But remoding for us also includes using the river more and changing the types of vehicles as well. So, what we can do to encourage and facilitate greater use of zero emission capable vehicles as part of that as well. Next slide, please. So I'm doing a presentation. I'm conscious at a webinar about cargo cycles, and I haven't yet, and I'm not going to show you a picture of a cargo cycle. Instead, you get this very exciting picture of a car park, which this morning, I'm pleased to say, our Planning and Transportation Committee agreed to reallocate 39 of the car parking spaces in here, which is pretty much all of those that you can see in this photo with the yellow paint on, as a last mile delivery hub for Amazon to use, so that deliveries will be done not just by cargo bike, but also on foot. And we think that that'll take about 85 vehicles off the streets of central London each day, which equates to about 23,000 fewer vehicle journeys in central London. And I say central London because actually this site will serve an area of a 2-kilometre radius around the hub. So it covers not just all of the city, but a substantial part of central London as well. And all being well, that will be operational by spring next year. And it will be the first of what we hope will be 5 last mile delivery hubs in the City of London by 2022. A great way to use an otherwise underutilised asset for us. And I guess, again, just going back to that transition point, again, we think certainly for relatively dense central urban areas, we're beyond the kind of proof of concept and pilot stage for last mile logistics, and very much it's just a case of providing the market with the space that they need. Easier said than they've done. Obviously, finding space is not always that easy, but if we can provide it, then we think we'll have no shortage of operators wanting to make use of that. Next slide, please. And then final slide for me, I guess, as I said, we've got a pretty good plan for freight. We think the market is reasonably well developed, and we're beyond pilots and proof of concept for both consolidation and last mile deliveries. But the big area that we're really keen to do more work on is around servicing. So again, about half the vans on our streets are servicing, building maintenance, etc. And we'd really like to see whether we can apply the same principles that we've been applying to freight to that side of things as well, to get those numbers down and reduce retime and remode servicing as well as freight too. And that is the final slide from me. So yeah, very happy to take any questions if there's time.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, we've got a few questions coming in. First one is, how do you accommodate all the additional cycles that require secure storage whilst people are stopped? So it's around parking, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess there's we're putting out quite a lot of additional cycle parking on street at the moment, and I guess that's more for non-cargo cycles. One of the other things that we've done is so not all of our car parks are suitable to be switched to, or the spare space in them is suitable for last mile logistics largely because of head height, headroom issues. But we do basically have a kind of parking permit for cargo cycles, which allows companies to take space at a much reduced rate beyond the usual market size for it, which gives secure, because all of our car parks are staffed 24 hours a day, so relatively secure place to store cargo bikes during the day that are then used largely for couriering, or would be used largely for couriering during deliveries during the day as well. And then we're also keen with new developments where we can to look at storage for cargo cycles, but also those push carts for hand deliveries as well, particularly for takeaway food and beverage takeaways as well for that.
Okay, and there's a couple of questions about is the hub exclusively for Amazon, and will the other 4 be tendered?
Yeah, so this was tendered. This was a market process to find someone for that. Obviously, that was on the basis of what they were prepared to pay, but also what we thought was going to have the biggest impact in terms of reducing van mileage on our streets as well. So this will be for the exclusive use, and we think actually probably for us a lot of the hubs will be exclusively used by single operators, but there are some where we've got it where we hopefully have a bit more space, where we might also have those be able to allow people to switch between so that people can one company can serve multiple operators from it as well.
Okay, and then there's just a couple of questions about where it's located, Bruce. Could you just repeat that?
Yeah, I don't think I said actually. So it's in there's a street in the city called London Wall, which is one of the few stretches of dual carriageway that we have left over from the 60s, and underneath that is a car park. So it's not really a car park that can be knocked down and redeveloped. So it's a pretty good location for it in that it's one that can be there forever and can be expanded if if the opportunity arises for it as well.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Bruce. I think it's probably about time we moved on to the next presenter, if we could. So next up is Adam Barnaby, co-founder and CEO of EAV. Hello, Adam.
Hello, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Go ahead. I'll save questions till at the end of the session. So if you just do your presentation, then we'll have questions at the very end.
Okay, excellent. So yes, if you can press play on the video, that'd be great. So my name is Adam Barnaby. I'm the founder and CEO of Eve.
Adam, you are currently on mute.
Sorry, back. So yeah, problem is pretty simple. Increased congestion and brutal change is required. To tackle that, we've got a pretty extensive product timeline. And to date, we have delivered our last mile delivery and commercial logistics vehicles, the EVE2 Cube and the EVE Ro-Ro. In 2021, we'll be starting to deliver a passenger version using the same platform of our existing cargo bike vehicles. And then into 2022, we've got a mid-mile solution, which we're not going to speak about today, but there'll be a press release coming out in early next year, which will again allow for more adoption of eCargo platforms. So there's nothing really that advanced about the way we've come about doing our platform sharing. It's very automotive standard-like, but essentially we make a chassis cab platform eCargo bike with adaptable rear boxes. We can take everything from a 2-cubed fixed box down to a pickup bed, and as well as this roll-on, roll-off Euro pallet size cargo pod that we produce as well. We can also produce a passenger version, which is currently in development. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. The product identity of the business, again, uses some pretty simple automotive thinking, but in the e-cargo bike industry at the moment, it's very much a case of e-cargo bikes, derived from bicycles, and we're very much about the sort of building a truly sustainable automotive spec innovative design. We've obviously done a lot of safety, so we're everything from ELK tests, which are hazard avoidance tests, to make sure that our vehicle is safe on the road, as well as nighttime testing, giving us the most amount of hours. These vehicles are predominantly used in the day, but we think there's going to be a pretty large opportunity to use them at night as well. We've worked really closely with our customers and our partners to increase the security and the functionality of the vehicle. We've got things like central locking systems operated from remote key fobs, and we pretty much tailor this to each customer. The EVE fleet is, it's growing as we speak, but again, we've got this year we've got the EVE2 Cubed. It's perfect for sort of logistics, cold chain, groceries market. We've also got the EVE Ro-Ro, which is this roll-on, roll-off pod we were explaining. It's perfect for retail, postal, and restocking within the last mile zone. And then the EVE Go, which is a taxi cargo disability access vehicle. I'm going to speak a little bit more about the EVE Go now, because we think it's, from a futures perspective, it's got the most amount of adaptability, and it's got the most innovation in it going forward. So it's able to act in multiple markets. We want to produce something that can economically transport passengers and commercial freight. And we want it to do all at the same time. So we're operating within the last mile zones where urbanization is obviously growing at an exponential rate. We're able to use like a ride hailing system and operate as a taxi, as well as collect groceries and do all of this all at the same time. Rather than having one vehicle for passengers, one vehicle for cargo, we can offer the whole freight. We can also obviously accessibility for wheelchair access. Beyond just passenger transport are significant. It's a relatively small, compact shape. It's 1 meter wide, about 2,700 long. And we've got about a 2 meter cubed rear section. The side doors with an ergonomic seat that can fold forward and allow access into the rear area. The rear area is specifically built to take a Euro pallet. So any form of Euro pallet or Euro size boxes that most companies use can fit into the rear access area. There's a ramp for the disabled access. That's spec for the largest wheelchair on the market as well at the moment. We can also build out our Euro pod Ro-Ro box. We're currently experimenting with range extenders using solar panels. At the moment, the solution is relatively early stages, but we've got a pretty robust development plan currently running. And we think that this vehicle is perfect for operating within both cycle and road infrastructure, offering both safety and comfortable. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I'd love to take some questions at the end of the session, but if you have any further questions after that, please visit our website and reply in a comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Really good. Thanks for that. Really interesting. Next on the agenda is Agata and Dorota from Poland. So really looking forward to hearing this and seeing what we can learn from you guys. Take it away.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, hello, everybody.
My name is Agata Lewandowska.
And I am Dorota Gajda-Ktowińska.
We are working for the municipality of Gdynia, Poland, for the EU Projects and Mobility Management Unit. And today we are pleased to talk about our cargo bike projects that we are pleased to implement in our city. First of the project is City Changer cargo bike. Next slide, please. And in this project, we can implement cargo bikes in our city. I would like to tell a few words about our city. Gdynia is in the north of Poland. It's a harbor city with 135 square kilometers and almost 250,000 of citizens. We are part of the Tri-City agglomeration, and a lot of our citizens work around the city, in the city, and also a lot of people from outside of the city commute to Gdynia to work. So transport is very, very important in our city, and it affects all branches of our life, as in majority of European cities, of course. The challenge we have is the altitude, because our city is quite hilly. At this time of year, it's also chilly. So chilly and hilly, which means that cycling is not the first option for majority of people. We also tackle with the number of cars, which is almost now 650 per 1,000 citizens. So there are too many cars in the city, and we have to tackle with that with many projects that manage the mobility in our city. And we strongly believe that cargo bikes are the solution, and that's why we are very pleased to take part in these projects that implement cargo bikes in our city. Next slide, please. We started in the City Changer cargo bike with raising awareness. This is because cargo bikes 2 or 3 years ago were not popular at all in our city. And first we decided to show the bikes to our citizens, show all sorts of ways that we can use them in a city. And we started with the campaigns that we manage, mobility campaigns. In this picture, you can see a car-free day when we were handing in lunches and breakfasts to public transport users. And for this action, we use cargo bikes to commute around the city with our sandwiches. In this way, we could show people how cargo bikes can be used in the city logistics. Next slide, please. In many events, we could introduce cargo bikes, organizing trying out sessions so that people in this situation, families, could have a try, have a look. What is this about? All of the cargo bikes that are used by the city are eCargo bikes. So in this hilly city, there is no more excuse why not to use a cargo bike. In the next slide, you can also see our campaign Eco Way to Kindergarten, in which we talk to kids aged from 3 to 7 about mobility in the city. In this activity book, we introduce elements of mobility, of active mobility, and we talk with kids about different ways of moving around the city. In this slide and in the next one, you can see a few activities in which we introduce cargo bikes so that the kids are getting more and more aware that a cargo bike is one of the modes of transport in the city. Thanks to that, we get to around 5,000 kids each year when we can talk with them how they can move around, how they can get to a kindergarten. And we already know that more and more of them are talking with their parents about bikes, about cargo bikes, and that cars are not the only solution. And we strongly believe that this youngest generation can really make a difference in the future. Next one, please. This is the cover of our booklet, in which we show different ways how to get to your kindergarten or to your school. Next, please. Another step after raising the awareness of our citizens was introducing a rental scheme. In this rental scheme, we started with 2. Already we have 4 cargo bikes for the citizens. Later on, Dorota will also tell you about the different projects in which we have a bit more cargo bikes for entrepreneurs, municipal institutions, and NGOs. We've got 3 points in different areas of the city where inhabitants can rent a cargo bike for free for 1 week. And this rental scheme has been on for more than a year, since October 2019. And we already had 214 bookings, 105 rentals, majority of them for 1 week. And we gather people's opinions, which are very, very positive. In the next one, it's the next slide, I will show you what questions do we ask. One of them is, has the cargo bike met your expectations? As you can see, almost 94% of the respondents said that yes, it met. The answers which says no are mainly focused on weather, which actually we don't have much influence on. They also say about very, very young kids, which require a bit more equipment while being transported in a cargo bike. Of course, it's still possible, and it's also seen in the Polish cities. And another thing that make people not very satisfied with cargo bike is infrastructure, which we still are very working on very much, so that it's more adapted to cycling and to cargo bikes in the city. The next question asked is, what's your main means of transport? As you can see, almost 66% of the people answer that people that rented a cargo bike say that they use a car. And this is why we really need to work very strongly on this group of people. The next question is, if people say that they've got a car, we ask how many cars are in your household. More than 40% of people renting a cargo bike state that they've got more than 1 car in their household, which means that we can really work on a cargo bike as a so-called second car in your family. This is for the beginning. Of course, we cannot make people resign from all the cars. It is not our aim, but we can work on this group of the second car in the family being your cargo bike. Next, please. Then we also ask people about money. What would be an incentive for you to buy a cargo bike? The price of an eCargo bike is more than 10,000 PLN, so it's about 2,100 euro. This is the price of one of the cheapest cargo bikes, eCargo bikes. And if people get 50% co-financing, they make decision and that they will buy a cargo bike, and this is an incentive that a city could introduce. That is why we decided to, as the first city in Poland, we decided to introduce an incentive in the form of a co-financing. Next, please. The funding scheme was established in June 2020 by our city council. In this picture, you can see the city council president of our city. This is Mrs. Zielińska. After many procedures, many regulations, we could introduce this funding scheme in our city. And now it's been operating since August. And thanks to that, we already could donate a few cargo bikes. Already 7 cargo bikes were bought in our city thanks to this co-financing. Next one. The procedure is quite simple. This is the application form. As I mentioned, we are the first city in Poland that introduced this co-financing. Unfortunately, this co-financing is not available at a national level. So the municipalities work on implementing them on their own. You can receive 50% of the price of a cargo bike, and it's up to 1,000 euro. Next one. And this is the first cargo bike bought in Gdynia thanks to co-financing. And we are very pleased that this cargo bike is used every day, and I can really see it. Next, please. What is very important for us is the support of our city councillors, our mayor, our deputy mayors. In this picture, you can see our website of the city, which is full of cargo bikes, which is full of pictures of city councillors trying out, because we think that if city councillors and the mayors try the bike out, they get this cargo bike smile, and they are more prone to support this kind of initiatives and to support cargo bikes in city logistics. That's why we work with our decision makers so that they can all try a cargo bike, and then they can talk about it, of course, in a positive way, because I believe that there are so many positive sides of cargo bikes that everybody discovers them, and they can talk about it and make others aware that this is a solution in a city. Now I would like to invite you to watch a very short video of our deputy mayor that is trying out a cargo bike in the city. Yes, we are coming back to the presentation. I hope you enjoyed that. Also, our press department is using a cargo bike because they can really get to many car-free zones, so that cargo bikes let them make videos and be present in most spectacular parts of the city during events. In this picture, you can see the 6th Polish Cargo Bike Festival. Cargo Bikes Festivals has been very important part of the cargo bike community in Poland. Each year, a cargo bike is held in a different city in Poland. This year, it was Lublin, southeast of Poland. A very important and very nice event when all the cargo bikes from Poland can meet. In this picture, in the very middle, in a cargo bike, Polish production bike, you can see a member of the parliament, Mr. Franek Sterczewski, who is a very strong enthusiast of cargo bikes and is working on introducing more good solutions for cargo bikes in the Polish Parliament. In the next slide, you can also see the community of cargo bikes in Poland. They are getting more and more interest. They are getting more interest within families as a very good means of transport in the cities, as well as for entrepreneurs and municipalities and NGOs. And now I will hand on to Dorota, who will talk about the second side of cargo bikes in Gdynia. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, again. So I want to say a few words about our second project, which is dedicated for the eCargo bikes. It is a project called COBIUM, Cargo Bikes in Urban Mobility. It is dedicated, as Agata mentioned, for entrepreneurs, NGOs, and city departments. Can you the next slide, please? The rule is easy. Everyone can test these cargo bikes and one within the trying out scheme, and it is possible to rent this for 30 days in a row. Next slide, please. Here you have some example of used the cargo bikes in this project. Here we have the participatory budget, which is organized in Gdynia each year, and in 2019 as 2020, the department which is responsible for participatory budget created the mobile points where citizens of Gdynia could vote for the project. It was very useful, especially now during COVID reality. Next slide, please. Also, our public city library use our cargo bikes. Generally, they have two kinds of uses. The first, it was a book crossing, which was done during last summer. And also, library take the cargo bike to move the books from one department to the other, because we have about 14 branches of libraries in Gdynia. So they move these books from, as I said, from one branch to the second one. The next slide, please. Also, our unit use cargo bikes very frequently. For example, here you have on the left, you have the final of our annual campaign, Bike to Work. And we are also promoting there the cargo bikes. Also, our participants of campaign can use these cargo bikes, test them. On the right, you have action from the European Mobility Week, where our colleagues from our unit brings breakfast to the different districts of Gdynia to user of public transport. The next slide, please.
1 minute, please. Please, Director.
Okay.
Thank you.
Also, it is used, as Agata said before, by our media department. We show the wider audience the cargo bikes during, for example, Independence Day. You see in the center photo our cargo during Independence Parade. The next slide. Here you have the users of them. Mostly are people who are responsible for deliveries. Mainly are food deliveries. Also during the COVID reality, it was especially in March, in April, bikes were used. The next one slide, please. Here also see, maybe I will talk about the bottom photo. During the Earth Day, NGOs rent a bike and do a cleaning in their area, the district area on the Wielki Kask. In the next slide, please. Finally, we had also our cargo bike on the red carpet, because every year in Gdynia we have a Polish film festival, and our colleagues decide, oh, maybe we will take a, you know, VIP shot. So we put our cargo on red carpet, and there is very famous photo in our city. The next slide. And here I want to show you a heat map, how our eCargo bikes within Cobium moved. This is a heat map from the last 3 months. As you see in the red, because in each cargo bike we have a GPS device, and we record the data from them. And as you see in the city center, the movement of the cargo bikes is the biggest. And sometimes our cargo go to the neighborhood districts or go to the neighborhood city like Sopot or Gdańsk. Thank you. The next. And thank you very much for your attention. If you have some questions, please ask us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Agata and Dorota. Looks a really nice place that you live. So it's very impressive, and we've got some questions coming in, which we'll come to at the end.
Okay.
But we'll move on to Edward now, if we can.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Really interesting to hear what our European counterparts are up to, and interesting to see that the integration of rental schemes and try before you buy schemes are really being taken on board and being successful. So that's actually something that we're trying to replicate here in the UK. Next slide, please. So I just thought I'd share this slide after a presentation with the University of Westminster, and it's really interesting to see how the differences between the increase in traffic and particularly light commercial vehicles across the country, giving a wider picture, as opposed to the reduction of use of vehicles in city centres. And actually something that wasn't picked up on, that I think is really an important opportunity for cargo bikes, is the fact that they could link rural and urban centres, you know, whether it's isolated communities in really rural environments such as, you know, Cornwall or Scotland. We work with small community interest projects to trial cargo bikes to see if it's feasible that they could replace commercial vehicles in that environment as well, which I think is really important, as well as the piece of you know, urban logistics and urban mobility with the family bikes. So there's been a 2% increase in vehicle mileage 2018 to 2019, and we expect that to continue. I think it's fair to say with COVID and the impact of that, there's going to be some real shifts. You know, from the conversations I've had, actually private ownerships of vehicles is actually on the increase from a side effect of COVID, by people not wanting to take public transport. You know, equally the opposite side of that is that we've seen a huge increase in the uptake of bicycles as a use of transport commuting, and hence the push on e-cargo bikes. Again, they're just to note, sort of 15% of vehicles on the road make up road traffic, and then there's all sorts of other aspects to consider, like you know, along with the amount of commercial vehicles being increased on the roads, that increased congestion in urban environments, as well as rural environments, average speeds. That is all predominantly been driven by the rise of e-commerce. So, you know, I heard a stat the other day, DPD delivered 12 million parcels in 1 week, which is phenomenal. So the increase in demand for same day and next day delivery is absolutely critical. And, you know, these conversations about eCargo and how they could support logistics, both urban and rural, is super important. Next slide, please. Again, it was touched on very briefly, but for us, we really want to highlight the fact that an electric cargo bike in particular, purely by virtue of the fact it makes things a lot easier, have drastically reduced associated costs. So you know, there's no road tax. Insurance, I would say, is probably vital. Servicing, again, vital. One thing this doesn't pick up on is how cargo bikes are a very different very different product to a normal bicycle. And so actually what we do as a brand is we encourage training. So we work with local authorities and businesses as well that are looking to implement cargo bikes, and we work on the training aspects of the bike, how they're used, you know, best practices, etc. So for us, it's about implementing them in a really sustainable way. But the image you can see there really highlights how low cost cargo bikes are to run. So it's really, you know, that's fundamental. Then you combine that with you know, the fact that they are zero emissions, bar obviously if it's electric, the energy to supply the charging of the bikes, and the fact that they can reduce congestion massively. Now, our bikes are relatively small in terms of the scale of them when it comes to the variant models that are available in the cargo bike market, but we predominantly focus on the bicycle derivative of cargo bikes, so that it's more acceptable when you're going down cycle paths, and particularly the cycle superhighways in London, and equally in rural environments. You know, it can be quite daunting, particularly on sort of small country lanes with electric cargo bikes versus sort of commercial vehicles. Next slide, please. So just to give you an overview of the market, we have a pretty good understanding of the market across Europe. They're a lot further ahead. I think we've got a long way to go, particularly in infrastructure, but the gear change document is really supporting that. And you know, there's a huge amount of funding for individuals that are looking to implement cargo bikes to their businesses. So we work really closely with Nottingham City Council on the implementation of their try before you buy scheme. So Nottingham City are taking 20 bikes that they will loan for a short period of time to businesses, and that has so many benefits. Key to that is, you know, economic recovery. So again, as I said in the previous slide, reduce cost, better for the environment, and the image as well. I think, you know, both at government level and at business level, everyone is of the understanding that you know, long term there is this modal shift. We have to change, and consumers are now more willing to pay more money or a higher price for goods and services that are more sustainable. And so, you know, a cargo bike is a really good message associated with it. But the market itself is growing massively. This year we're expected to sell about around 50,000 units in the European market, which includes the UK. Business bikes, which are the commercial bikes rather than the cargo bikes that carry people, now rival family cargo bike sales, and non-electric bikes are now only making up 25% of the total sales number. So it's a really a changing market. And like I said, the key thing for me is to get cargo bikes into the market for people to try in a sustainable way, making sure people that use them have training, and that they're used in the right way. But like I said, another key thing is, yes, urban logistics, absolutely, but how we could support by linking rural and urban environments. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. We'll come to questions after Richard. So without further ado, Richard, if you'd like to go. We've got the presentation. We're just waiting for Richard to appear, I think. Ah. There he is. Excellent. We can see you now, Richard. We can see you, but we can't hear you.
Thank you. Yes. Hello, it was not me. The system was ground to halt there. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Richard Armitage. I'm from the European Cycle Logistics Federation today, although some of you will realise that I'm also active at Manchester Bike Hire. I'm going to talk to you, next slide please. I'm going to talk to you about a new cycling industry trade body, about an experts group on cargo bikes and what we're doing, but crucially about scaling up. Next slide, please. We are, ECLF are now in strategic partnership with the new trade body for Europe, cycling industry called Cycling Industries Europe. And within that, we're promoting the cargo bike and cycle delivery sector. Like Agatha and Dorota, we are members of the City Changer Cargo Bike project, and we were also members of the two previous projects. And this has been the bedrock on which we've built a series of national associations of cycle logistics operators, and now the European Cycle Logistics Federation. And as a result of all of that, last October we formed an experts group, a common structure that's used in Brussels to promote specific sectors of the economy, to give them focus. And our task groups have been very busy. Next slide, please. So the Cargo Bike Experts Group has got a task group on standards. We have full representation at the European Standards Institute in their working group 9 on cargo bikes. And at the November meeting that's just gone by, we actually dealt with industry-wide, European-wide surveys of manufacturers of cargo bikes, of cycle logistics operators. I'll come on to the market survey of manufacturers in a moment, but of the operators, we actually recorded in the survey over 6 million miles of cargo bike operation, looking at safety, at the safety record, because this was being queried, and we were able to show that cargo bikes are actually very, very safe indeed. Both of these surveys are the first of the industry ever published, and all of this is about the industry growing up and becoming more mature. The German standards outfit produced a DIN standard on cargo bikes, and the Norme Française has also produced a French cargo bike standard. And those two standards are informing an industry-wide, European industry-wide standard for cargo bikes that's being put together. Crucially, it's looking at safety. Do the brakes work? At payload, is it safe on the road carrying that amount of stuff? And also about mission critical is to remain a pedal cycle as we're doing that. And what's all this about? Well, on the one hand, it's a bit boring, it's a bit dull, it's a bit bureaucratic even, lots of bits of paper shuffling, but we see this as the way for the industry to become properly established, to make it worthwhile for industrialists to invest in manufacture, because they know what the standards are to which they must the minimum standards to which they must adhere, have been agreed by other industry experts as well, and it's the classic way of this kind of industry growing up. Next slide, please. We've also done a lot of work on marketing and communications, and I'm pleased to say that this is now paying off. We regularly speak with members of Frans Timmermans' cabinet. He's the vice president, just below Ursula von der Leyen. And also we've been directly speaking with the new DG Transport Commissioner, Adina Vălean. And we've again issued details of our market survey to them, so much so that last week we were able to demonstrate that we are now firmly in the EU Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy, which was published last week, which mentions cargo bikes in the logistics section. Next slide, please. Our 2020 market survey was the first of its kind, as I said. It wasn't comprehensive yet. It's the first one, but 38 brands nonetheless. None of some of them were brand new to the industry, and in 2018 nobody had sold over 5,000 cargo bikes. But actually, we're now looking at doubling of growth, and you'll see that in the next slide. Next slide, next slide. Oh, there we are. Just phenomenal growth. And we think 2021 will be at least the same again. This is an industry worth investing in, and people who are buying cargo bikes, I think it guarantees we're also going to see the development of a second-hand market at last, which is of course essential for everybody. Next slide, please. Kevin Main, the CEO of Cycling Industries Europe, has led from the front on all of this. Interestingly, he's a Briton now living in Brussels, in Belgium, working in Brussels. And he has led the talks with Timmermans and Balayan. We are demonstrating that a trade body that takes in everybody under its umbrella is the way to promote and to develop a fully fledged industry. Next slide, please. What does scaling up look like? We think there are two strands. There's your family bikes, and then of course there's the bikes business. So we studied the light commercial van sales, and you've already seen Ed's usage graph just now. There were 2 million light commercial vehicle sales in Europe in 2019. The one thing we did like about them was that they've got a great ecosystem supporting the operation and maintenance. We reckon from research, and this is all published and you can go and check it out, that 1 in 2 LCV sales could be replaced with cargo bike sales. So therefore we think that we're looking at about 1 million cargo bike sales per year by 2030 in order to meet Ursula von der Leyen's new Green Deal objectives in reference to carbon reduction and so on. On the domestic front, we've studied use levels in Copenhagen, about 40,000 cargo bikes in regular use in the city. And if you extrapolate that to other European cities, again, it's 500,000 to 1 million cargo bike sales per year by 2030. Next slide, please. That adds up to around 2 million cargo bikes per year at €3,000 each. That would be 6 billion annual sales. And then you have the full ecosystem. You need a second-hand market. You need repairs and maintenance with people skilled and able to do those jobs. This is new green jobs. We need the suppliers of parts and accessories to be on board. And by the way, Cycling Industries Europe is having very detailed talks with the accessories and parts industry, because they've realized that they need to come up with better equipment for cargo bikes because it's getting much more hammer. There's the training of everybody, whether it's the sales staff, whether it's the maintenance crew, whether it's the riders. Then there's the support services, insurance, marketing, branding, all that kind of thing. Breakdown services. If your cargo bike's off the road and has to go into the workshop, can you get another one? Just like you can in the van industry. And of course, it's all being fully digitally integrated into the Internet of Things and smart travel and smart distribution. Next slide, please. So what I'm trying to suggest to you is that on the one hand, we need Agatha and Bruce to be doing their projects on the ground. Interestingly, their projects were very contrasting. We need both, by the way, not either or. We need both. And at the other end of the equation, we need people who pull it all together and represent the industry in an intelligent manner to the people that make decisions, whether it's in the industry of manufacturer and parts of original equipment, or whether it's in the political field, who deciding on budgets, it looks set fair that there will be around €6 billion in the next European Union Commission budget for bikes, for promotion of cycling. That is a lot of beans. This is a time for bikes, this is a time for cargo bikes, and I commend them all to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Richard. So that has brought us to the end of the presentations. So thank you to everyone for that. And I think we can now move into questions. We're a little bit behind on our times, but not too bad, because we've already had questions for Bruce at the start. So I'll wait to see everyone returning if I can. In the meantime, Richard, there's a few questions that have come in for you. One of them is there any ambition to make the standard an ISO standard eventually?
Yeah, to be honest, really honest, we haven't discussed it. We need to do one thing at a time. Even coordinating a pan-European standard is going to be an enormous task. I don't know who the questioner was, but if you want to come back to me with more detailed stuff on this, you're welcome. We are having very, very detailed technical discussions about payload, about different grades of standard, different classifications, if you like, and it is actually a miasma of different rules, regulations, and so on. So, for instance, and this is terribly important, DG GROW, the economic section of the European Commission, is right now conducting an investigation into personal mobility devices. Now, originally this was about e-scooters, but it's actually been widened to include e-bikes and e-cargo bikes. And a UK consultancy, Transport Research Laboratory, is conducting a full-on consultation and review of anything to do with the regulation of so-called personal mobility devices. We might call them light electric vehicles. And buried inside there is the possibility of requiring e-cargo bikes within the EU to be type approved. The technicals amongst you, including, I know Adam certainly knows about all this stuff, this could potentially really hold our development back. So we are actually concentrating on getting our own house in order in Europe right now, of being able to present to DG GROW and anybody else who's interested a set of coherent proposals that have industry support and are justified on safety and on operational grounds. So ISO, yes, I'm sure it will come in the end. I mean, we have to be aware that in other parts of the globe, the regulatory environment for cargo bikes is extremely different to ours in Europe. So that would be a very long process as well.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. This one is for Edward and Adam. What work have you done with existing cycle logistic operators to determine your specs? Many operators have resorted to self-build in terms of adaptation, and weight factors adds to strain on some bikes and components that struggle to cope with. So it's about, I suppose, people adapting their bikes themselves.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first on that one. So actually, our first initial concept we built with DPD as our technical partner. So I'm a designer by trade, and what I didn't want to do was create something that I thought I wanted, not something that someone else wanted. So we really focused on sitting down, creating a design brief with someone that actually wanted to purchase an eCargo bike first and foremost. And very high on that list was the maintenance, the low maintenance, and the maximum utilization of the vehicle. Fleet operators don't want these things to break, and they also want them to be safe, as well as sort of visually appealing to them. So they don't want to put their brand or their mark on something that doesn't necessarily look like a vehicle. So we focus really heavily on producing something that was incredibly safe, hence the reason why we have 4 wheels, and incredibly sort of acceptable to the public as it's being parked, down streets, going through pedestrian zones, down cycle lanes, etc. It's accepted both in cycle lanes as well as on the road, because we have lights, indicators, brake lights, etc. Those are the sort of developments that we had in the very early days. That was part of our makeup as a company.
Great, thanks, Adam. Edward, are you happy with that, or is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, it's just a sort of small note that, very similar to us, we use tried and tested models that come from our association with the Excel group. So the bikes have been tested. I mean, there was some question about Euro crates, which was quite apparent early on that was quite consistent with people that were using the bikes for last mile deliveries. I think for us, they need to be versatile, and we really focus on the smaller business for the opportunity that these bikes could present. But no, I think apart from that, like I said, it's all to a standard, and I think there will be some changes to the products that we have, some additions to the range to broaden the reach, so to speak.
I think one more thing to add on that, and coming back to what Richard was saying about the rules that they're creating, is almost to not stop the sort of the unsafe use, but actually create a standard that is safe. So, for example, tyre loadings, just like we have on cars at the moment, we shouldn't be overloading these vehicles, because there are some operators out there that massively overload their vehicles, and the last thing any of us want is for there to be a serious accident on the roads, involving an eCargo bike of any description. So we're quite keen to make sure that we have proper standards going forward, which is what we're working with CIE with.
Thank you for that. This one's for Agatha and Dorota. So are there particular types of businesses showing most interest in integrating cargo bikes into their operations in your city?
I think that the most successful is logistics, and the courier company DPD has already ordered cargo bikes for their own fleet in the city after a few months of a trying out scheme. They've been using a cargo bike for a few months already, rented from the municipal fleet, and actually right now they cannot imagine their work without it, and they ordered customized cargo bikes for the logistics, for the last mile logistics in the city center. Cargo bikes are also very popular among restaurants that deliver food around the city, and also for restaurants that have got a few branches within a few 2 miles, for example, so that they can improve their process of logistics within the restaurants in the city center, and they transport goods to just one branch, and then they move around in the city center with a cargo bike. I think these are the most seen impacts done by cargo bikes in our city.
Great, and a follow-up question to that is around infrastructure. So you've talked a lot about the promotions you're doing and the try before you buy. But there's a couple of questions on what you're doing to make your infrastructure safe and appealing for people to use.
I think it's actually a broader question, because it's about cycling infrastructure, not only for cargo bikes. And I think that the more infrastructure is safe and good for bikes, the more cargo bikes will appear. I think it's just a kind of a new level of cycling, cycle logistics. Our department is not responsible for infrastructure, but the City Hall has got many plans and is implementing new plans in the city so that the cycling network is better and makes people change their decisions each morning. What kind of transport do they use in commuting in the city? I think there is still a lot to be done, actually, but we are moving in a good direction.
Great, thank you. Richard, coming back to you, there was a question that says, how will the EU developments be taken forward in the UK and by whom?
Now, come on, if I knew the answer to that. Well, first of all, with or without Brexit, we have a UK Cyclogistics Federation. It's very small and modest, but it is there, and it is a member of the European Cyclogistics Federation. And I think that regardless of the outcome of Brexit, there is a whole culture. It is a culture out there of operators, manufacturers, promoters, cities, municipal councils who want the cargo bike to succeed, and we're all very, very good at communicating and talking with each other. We've had to be, because otherwise we wouldn't be where we are now with looking at takeoff and looking at scaling up. I think that that will continue regardless. Secondly, I think that it would be very, very strange indeed for us in the UK to want to have a different standard to the one that's going to be adopted by Working Group 9 of CEN. And why is that? Well, because it means that any cargo bikes we import from CEN territory won't meet our standard in some way or other. But more importantly, and there's a UK manufacturer on the call today, anybody wanting to export will have to meet those standards realistically if they are to sell well and sell extensively in the European Union. So I think that this will be something that I hope that common sense will prevail. I live in hope.
Great, thanks for that. Edward, one question that came up whilst you were doing your presentation, but it might be for others to answer as well, is about insurance. So where can you get insurance for eCargo bikes in the UK?
Good question. Actually, it's pretty limited, if I'm perfectly honest. The only one we know of is Yellow Jersey. I believe that they can provide insurance for the bike and the user. I don't know if Richard, he might be better directed his way on that one. He had any ideas?
Yes. Yeah, there are actually 3 or 4 companies specializing in bike insurance, which are more or less interested in this market. But again, as I mentioned in the ecosystem concept earlier, interest is growing rapidly now. But the big one and the most obvious one is CycleSure, or Butterworth and Spengler, based in Liverpool, and certainly they have systems. There are also specialist logistics insurance companies who are perfectly happy insuring cycle logistics companies. I'm just trying to think how best to do this, but if someone wants to get in touch via the ECLF website, or if they know how to get hold of my email, it's pretty out there, I will send people a list.
I think there's a little bit of an education piece on that as well, for where people can go for the information, which is always lacking in the cargo bike space, because no one's really, putting that information out there. So, we're having to sort of help our customers get the answers for things like insurance at the same time.
Yeah. Yes, and actually, Aaron, if I can just quickly come in. So, in fact, there are discussions going on about how to assist with good quality advice. And I don't want to put undue pressure on government agencies at this moment by mentioning names, but but there are discussions going on about how to do that. And I certainly think it's becoming quite pressing, because I'm only one person and there's a little limit to how much free advice I can give out and live. So yes, I think we need to do something on that.
Thank you for that. Adam, one for you. Your EAV vehicles, you say you can go into cycle lanes, and someone said, is this detrimental to cyclists because of the vast difference in size between EAV vehicles and normal cyclists?
Yeah, so I mean, we get this question a lot. Yes, it's legal to go in a cycle lane. By law, the cycle lanes in the UK and Europe should be a minimum of 1.5 meters wide. They rarely are in most cases. But actually, because we're traveling at the same sort of speed as everyone else, and we're signaling, maneuvering, we haven't had any detrimental remarks or anything made back to us or our customers to date. And like I say, what we tend to operate both in road and in cycle lanes. So it's very widely accepted that it doesn't really offend car users, and it hasn't yet offended any cycle users. So I can only answer that on this. I'm an avid cycler, and I don't get. It's not that big. It's only just under a meter wide. So it's not a huge vehicle. It just looks bigger than a bike.
Yeah, good point.
May I ask a question here?
Yeah.
Yes. If this bike is 1 meter wide, do you sell it also outside UK?
Yeah, absolutely. Our largest market is, without a shadow of a doubt, Europe and Scandinavia.
Okay, I'm asking that because in Poland we've got different regulations saying that if something is regarded as a bike, it cannot be wider than 90 centimeters. That's why a bike wide 1 meter wouldn't be allowed on cycling lanes.
And this comes back to the European standards that we're sort of trying to work with CIE, because there's different rules for Denmark, Sweden, Norway, even though they're all the same. It's just a different rule book. So yeah, we're very aware of that, and as of yet we're not in Poland, but there are different rule books for 3- and 4-wheel bikes as well. Some places don't accept 4 wheels as a bicycle, but we obviously have 4 wheels from a safety point of view. And yeah, there are lots of changes going on, not only in Europe but also in the US as well, where we're exporting to, who again have different width restrictions and different power output restrictions as well.
Okay, thank you.
Richard, there was a couple of questions about having some standards for the size of stacking plates, crates, all of those type of things. Is there anything you could say on that?
Well, yes, I think it's particularly in the commercial side of cargo bikes, you know, as in the business side, the business use side, the organization use side. It's well accepted that we need to look at Eurocrate specifications and fit that around. If you take the Carla Cargo trailer, which I'm involved with directly here in the UK, you can get 4 bread trays on that, Eurocrate size, and we regularly stack them 5 high, and they fit perfectly within the tray on the flatbed of the trailer. So that is deliberate, because Carla Cargo's Marcus Bergman designed that in from the word go 67 years ago. I think that any company wanting to sell into that side of the market is going to have to pay close attention to Eurocrate sizes.
I agree.
Right. Agatha, there was a question about whether you plan to expand your cargo bike scheme into other areas, the rental scheme particularly.
Other areas, we work within the city, so we cannot work outside the city. But I hope we inspire other cities in Poland. We are planning to expand our rental scheme for other districts in the city, we hope that right now we've got 21 districts in the city, and cargo bikes are now available, of course, in the whole city, but you can pick them up in 3 points in the city, a bit in the north, center, and in the southwest. So we hope that other directions will also have this possibility, and we cooperate with district centers on that. Of course, now it's the difficult time because these district centers are locked, and we cannot actually continue with meetings with inhabitants and citizens, but we hope that it will develop. And we also have got a lot of inquiries from other branches from the city that want to switch to cargo bikes and want to try it before they buy it. So I hope it will develop in this way. Of course, we still need to work on infrastructure and solutions from cargo bike companies, because quite a few companies, restaurants need to have their specific requirements taken into consideration when they want to implement cargo bikes in their fleet.
Brilliant.
Great, thanks for that. A question on how are eCargo bikes charged? Edward, perhaps?
Yeah, do you want me to pick that up? Yeah, so our cargo bikes are powered by a Yamaha motor and battery system. The charging can be done with the battery on or off the bike, so it's a detachable battery. It's about a sort of handheld battery, so it's relatively small, and charging time, if it's completely empty, takes about 2.5 to 3 hours to charge back to full capacity. And our particular bikes have a range of about 40 miles on a single charge.
Great, thanks for that. Right, let's having a look at some others. Lots of questions that have been coming in, and I don't think we'll have time to go through them all. What is the impact of Brexit? Well, who knows? Richard, have you got an idea of that?
Well, as somebody who sells cargo bikes, I've got a whole load of them the other side of the channel in a traffic queue outside Calais right now. But anyway, on a more serious note, I'm afraid at the moment it's very difficult to tell, but it looks as though we're looking at a 15 to 25% price increase.
Yeah.
What else can I say?
Just to comment on that, really. The conversations that I've had with various entities, both local authority, central government, and businesses, is that regardless of what happens economically and with the effects of Brexit, you know, we're still going to have these carbon reduction targets for both government and businesses alike. So I think, you know, regardless of what happens with Brexit, I think we've just got to continue the message and keep conversations like this going to keep pushing the envelope of what cargo bikes can really do. So I think, you know, instead of looking at it in a positive, negative light, I think we should, you know, yes, there might be some struggles, but I think the cargo bike can have real substantial benefits.
From our side of things on that, if I may, one of the things that we've sort of package protected for on our vehicle is that we can flat pack it. So we can section our steering and our seat post can go flat, and we can send the whole chassis in a 250mm pallets space and stack them 10 high. So we're capable of exporting in very efficient packaging scenarios. So from an export point of view, I think it may end up being a good thing for us in the long run. But either way, there's no way of telling exactly what's going to happen until it happens.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the panel questions and the